record. We're recording. Hi. This is the end of week 1, Collab Lab TCL-16. How was the week? How did it go?
Good.
Good. Lots of pair programming.
Yeah, just getting everything set up.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel the issues were this week? Were they really challenging? Were they okay? Like, how did that go?
I'll speak for issue 2. I thought they were pretty smooth. There's a lot of documentation for stuff at this point, and I think at least Waverly and I have done stuff with React Router DOM before, so it didn't feel too out of scope knowledge-wise.
That's good. What about issue 1?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I think there's good examples of how to use Firestore, and documentation isn't bad. So it wasn't that difficult to figure out.
Nice. Good. It sounds like everybody's really digging into documentation, which is great. Okay, so before we jump into demos, I want to do a quick walking of the board to see what we need to move, groom the backlog a bit, if you will. Okay, so these are all in the in progress column. I think that you had said they all got merged. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So since they're all merged, I'm just going to pop them all over here to done. And we will go over the next issues later, but I'll go ahead and put those in progress because those are the 2 that we will tackle then.
Should we be moving them as we once we finish our issue, should we move it or?
Yeah, totally. So as you go, like whenever it's in the next step, just move it. Once the other pair reviews it, they can move it to the next one, say, mentor review or whatever. And I don't know if we have this documented anywhere. But one of the team's last cohort, because there was a lot of lag time between the opposite pair reviewing it and then the mentors reviewing it. And we found that the smoothest way to do it in that team was you put up your PR for review and tell the other pair, hey, other pair, our PR is ready for review. And then as soon as they review it, if they approve it, then they can tag the mentors in so that they don't have to wait for you to come back online tomorrow maybe and then tag the mentors in. So just as soon as it's ready for the next step, we'll all just work as a team to make sure whoever needs to know next knows. And we can just see how that goes and come up with like this team is unique to Collab Lab just like all the others, so you don't have to follow the same processes, and you can do whatever works for you. So just kind of try and keep a finger on the pulse of what you think works, and we will do those things. Okay. That's quite enough of me. Let's see what you have. Who wants to demo first?
We can. I think I have it spun up already. Well, this is kind of going to show off both since our branches we pulled in main, and the other group pushed to main first. So this is kind of everything.
Okay.
It's totally fine.
Do we want to see the code first or the?
How about walk us
server?
through what it looks like in the UI,
Okay.
and then we'll go into the code.
So we've got most of the basic boilerplate still from what we started with, but we just kind of built on the bottom with the issues. So this is group 1 here with the Firebase. So we just had the React Router DOM with this list view and add item with the bold item here at the bottom. And then per Sky's request, we did some fallback error handling, which we built. So if we just enter a path that's not registered, it loads another component for 404, which was kind of our own design, but there's a number of ways we could have done that. But I think that'll be the most modular for future.
Yeah, totally. I wasn't trying to force y'all to do that. I just said for the future, but you just threw it in there, which was really cool. So yay for your initiative.
Yeah, that's
Sure.
level for sure. I love it.
Yeah, we could have done it right in the app, I guess, but it just seemed like having a not found component will be useful. And that's, yeah, mostly it.
So will you click on those buttons again? I wasn't paying attention to the
So that, yeah, these fall back to the exact path.
Amazing. Okay, that's really cool. Good job.
And then just looking at the example repo, we assumed that, or the one that's deployed, that we assumed list view would just be the home path up here. But it does recognize it as list view once it's clicked on the link. So
Cool. That looks great.
yeah,
Super cool.
and then yeah, I can switch to the code, or the other group can show.
Yeah, let's see the code and see what makes this all go.
All right.
Or if your other partner wants to do the code part or something, it's fine too. However y'all want to work it out.
Oh yeah, this little stop share. I guess I already have it pulled up. So if you want, we really.
You're gonna pull it up. Go for it.
So this is kind of, everything's in app right now, which we met as a group this week to talk about some design structure with components, which we're already seeing with not found and shopping list here. That could even be further separated for like sort of front end or like utility, I would say. But yeah, everything's in the app right now, mostly, besides the shopping list. But these could get abstracted somewhere as well. And yeah, mostly just this switch setup. React Router DOM does a lot with all of its features here, and then you kind of just bring them in and lay them out pretty logically. The nice part with that 404 is that it goes through the exact paths that are registered first, and then if not, it defaults to this. So anything that it doesn't catch for exact paths, it'll send us there. And then, yeah, per Sky's review, we just added this this extra default here for that sort of extra in between, since it's not declared otherwise. So yeah, pretty simple.
Amazing. This looks great. I kind of like that you've left it all in the app now since it's so little, because it will obviously get extracted out at some point, but we see a lot of merge conflicts in the first week generally because there's so many different file structures. Like each pair will do it like completely different. And it's hard to kind of like put it all together. But when you have it all in one file like this in the beginning, it's like, oh, well, we can just merge those right together like this. So great job. This looks great. Does anybody have
that? And I like the fact that you discussed the component structure as well beforehand, so you're kind of unified. Even as you do branch out, you have a general idea of the architecture.
Totally. That is like teamwork.
Yeah,
I like
that's cool stuff.
I like Stacy said, you kept it simple, and like, sorry, there's a 3-year-old really active for some reason behind me. Kept it simple, and sometimes like you could go crazy and just like be like, I'm just gonna like break everything apart and make these components over here and create this folder structure over here. And sometimes when you're starting, it's probably not even necessary to go that far. It's just like keep it simple and let it like flow through. So and like Sky said, you guys, like, I love the collaboration. You guys came together and you guys decided like how you wanted to structure like some stuff. So that's awesome as well.
Good job, team. Any other questions? Maybe like, do the other pair, do you have any questions about how it works, or like if anything doesn't quite make sense that you want to get cleaned up like in your mind, because you'll all be touching this exact code at some point. So it's really important that you kind of know how it's working. So is there anything that you just want to know a little bit more about?
Could you have used, sorry, I'm just realizing this. Could you have used nav link instead of building out the function menu link? I might be wrong, but
What was the question? Used what? Knoblink?
Navlink, like NAVLINK. It's I think it comes from React Router.
It is, yeah.
I
Okay.
think that's what I've used before.
I'll send you
They
the
kind of just, instead of building it like this, like a custom menu,
Yeah.
they'll just handle all this.
I think it would do the same thing, but I'm not completely sure.
one thing.
I was just wondering if
Yeah. Definitely possible. I'm sure that it's such a like standard switch kind of setup that I bet that's in there. I'll have to look that up.
One thing that you can do with stuff like that, if you're curious about it and you want to look into it, but you don't have time right now, that I would really recommend doing is creating a GitHub issue for it. So you can create an issue just like the issues you're working on right now and say something like, you know, experiment with Navlink or investigate Navlink to see if we can refactor the switch on line X to Z or whatever. So definitely like document all those thoughts, because not only will it be there if you ever decide to continue working on this in the future, but it can demonstrate to future employers as well that you can do more than just the like coding part of it. You're like thinking ahead and thinking of things you can change and you know, organizing that in a way that makes sense for you now and for future developers on the project. So never hesitate to create GitHub issues for those. But great job on this. Any other questions on this one?
I have just sort of a general question. What is the, I don't know if there's a standard, but as far as like commenting code, are there any like best practices that we should be following?
Sure, that is a great question. So despite that this sounds ridiculous, because it is ridiculous, commenting in code can be kind of controversial. Comments are controversial. Why? That's dumb. My take on comments is that comments are amazing and super helpful. I think that if you leave comments, you should make an effort to make them more about why the code is in place and not what the code does. So you want to write your code in a way that's clean enough that most people, if they read it, could understand or figure out what it's doing. So like an example of that, like sometimes you'll have like, people will do this tiny little one line of code that does 100 things. And sure, that's really fancy and impressive. Good job. But it's like sometimes a longer, more readable code is better documentation. So anyway, code in a way that's easy to read. And when you leave comments, leave them about why that piece exists, why you needed to have this extra function to do something, and maybe like other pieces of the code that it touches that you might not suspect. Because if you're working in a huge code base, like the one Sky and I work on, it can kind of be like, you change one tiny little thing over here and you think, yeah, I got all my ducks in a row and I fixed everything that needed to be fixed. And then you find out that it has something to do with something like really far away that you had no idea. So like things like that will help maintain the code are helpful. But when it comes down to it, this is y'all's project. So however you all feel as a team about comments and how you want to navigate those is totally up to you. I think they're helpful too, because you're probably going to be reviewing this code in an interview at some point or before you go into interview. And it'll be helpful to kind of like re-get your bearings if there's comments and they're telling you what all the different pieces are doing. So it's up to y'all. I say comments are great. Do you, Eddie or Sky, do you have other thoughts on that?
Yeah, like you said, they're controversial. I think I think the code should largely speak for itself, and you can have, you know, the kind of the component structure that we've got in the project here that kind of helps you kind of get it in your head. Now, where I really like comments, and I'll see it in Zappier's code base or anybody else's code base, is if it's not immediately apparent what something does. For instance, if you get to the point where you have some kind of helper function and you create a file called utils.js, and you kind of pile a bunch of different random utilities that can be used throughout the code base. In that case, like absolutely, like you could, top like above the function definition, you can be like, this is great to be used when blah, 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 blah. Here's the inputs, here's the outputs. And so, no, I think documentation in code is good. I guess it's just always like, you're trying to answer the question of, okay, who's going to come along, who's going to see this, and is this code sufficiently clear that they'll understand what it is, or would a comment be help them understand what's going on? Because you write code, once, but it gets read, much more. So
Totally.
Right.
One place that I like work a lot with like styling. I work on like our marketing pages, so very, very front end heavy stuff. But I have to leave a lot of comments like in my styling where I'm like, this is specifically for Firefox, or this is because like when you're in Chrome DevTools and you're clicking off styles, you're like, why would we need this style here? It does nothing. And then you're like, oh, it does something. Like look this in Firefox and you'll see why. So like things like that it's like somebody would look at and be like, but why? And then you just want to answer why in your comments.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a little bit weird, I guess. I work on the front end and back end, so like a lot of the time for the back end, like I'm pretty big on like clean code, so I'm like try to keep the functions under like 10 lines because I don't want to be reading like 20-line functions and stuff like that. So like I'll use like descriptive names and like try to type in and return types and stuff like that. But sometimes we can't explain it through the code, or it goes beyond that. So I'll add in my doc blocks or something like that, explaining the code, letting them know like, hey, this function does this, or it applies to this, or the reason I did something.
Yeah, it's totally fair too. Like if you're gonna have a really long why on something and it needs to link out to like, Jira tickets or Asana or whatever you use to like remove that comment into like Notion or something and just link to it in the comments, like see more about this here. And then you can have a full document, because some of the decisions that we make in our code are like really big decisions. So you can like link out to things, but in the end, this is your project. So do what you will. And then when you get onto a team, feel out the way they feel about them. And then also use your voice to be heard too, because what you've experienced is valuable as well. And it's okay to, try and help people change the way that they work because you found a way that works for a team. Okay, cool. Amazing work on this issue. Let's see the other pair's issue.
One of us can, here, I can start sharing. She wants to share the code. Let's see. Okay, so, well, I will show, so I'll get started and then, so same page. So our issue was connecting to Firestore. So I had it. Oh yeah, it's right here. So I'll just, maybe I'll pull this out so we can see that. Basically, we just wanted to make sure that any change that was reflected, or any change made here would be reflected in our Firestore. So these are some of the items that we had added. So I can add cheese. And over here, a doc was added for cheese. If I delete an item from here, not that. Hold on. I know there's a way to delete them, but I can't remember how. Maisha, do you remember how to delete from here? I'll delete them.
Maybe it's
here. Maybe we can just do this. But yeah, delete document. So if I delete this document over here, the change will be reflected. And we also made it so that if you click on one of these, it deletes. So you'll see that change happening over there too. So that was the bulk of our issue, was just configuring this so that our app was listening to any changes that were happening over here. I can pull up the code because I'm not sure if my issue's there. So we, as we said before, we put this in a separate component just to avoid any merge conflicts. So a lot of this was just from the Firebase documentation. So we're using the Firebase library and the React Firebase hooks library. So this was already set up for us, but this was, Firebase was initialized over here. So we exported it as FB and then used it in this shopping list component, which I'm sure will change around, but just to get it out of app. So, this hook is for our input when we're typing in an item. So we've got right here is the input. So we're using this hook to manage that so that it's controlled as we're typing into that form. And then we've got, sorry, I feel like very scattered because it's like this is related to something else. This one again is related to controlling the input. And then submit handler is what is going to speak with our database, and it's going to add the doc for the item that we've entered. This delete handler just directly deletes it from the database, which will in turn update the database which will in turn update the list that we have on our front end, because this use collection hook was really useful, and we got this right from the documentation. This basically just sets up a listener so that any change either way is going to be reflected both on the front end and in our database. And so this hook was all just what we got straight from the documentation. And this piece was basically like if an error comes back from the database, we'll show that. Before it loads, we'll show a loading message, and otherwise we just map through the items that come from the database and display each item. So that is what we've done here.
This looks great. Anybody have any questions on this? I kind of have a question, but I want to see if anybody else has anything. Anything? Comments, questions, concerns?
I just really like the click delete. I thought that was, I mean, we don't have like a lot of UX going on or anything, but I thought it was a slick little ad.
Yeah, that was all my
for testing too. Was nice to be able to see it in real time there.
Yeah. I guess she's having computer problems because I don't see her right in here right now. But yeah, we'll obviously clean that up on the front end because that was just something she threw in that I didn't even know about. But yeah.
It does look like Maisha dropped out.
Yeah, I think she's having computer problems.
Okay.
Yeah, you might want to just leave that delete in since you guys already did it, because it is on like an upcoming issue to do that. So it's like, this is like when we're going through the issues and stuff, you want to try and like stick as closely to the acceptance criteria as you can, because like when you do other things, it like kind of bleeds into where you're doing other work, which is fine.
Got it.
And you have more time to do stuff going forward. But like on 2 groups today, I saw like your list looks great and it's an actual list with like list names and stuff. But I think that there's like one of the upcoming issues is like doing that part. So you guys are a little bit ahead, which is totally fine because it gives you extra time to sort of like refactor things. So I think on the first issue, it says something like just create like a button or a counter or something that does something really basic just to demonstrate that it goes back and forth. Because then like you'll have to really like structure your database and stuff, but this is totally fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Within the time. Good.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as like structuring our database, that's something that we, like it might change.
Totes. Yeah, no, this looks great. It is of no fault. You did a brilliant job. I'm very impressed. So good job. So can you walk us through a little bit what what the other teammates might need to do if they want to add more data to the database? Like if they wanted to send a new value or something.
Yes. So it's all like, basically we just got everything right from the documentation, but if they want to send a new data or send a new value as like, so, okay. So where did we add? Okay. So this db.collection, I have to double check, but I'm fairly positive. This db.collection.add, this will add a it'll search for it'll search in our database for a collection called shopping list. If they find one, it'll add a document with this data in it. If not, it will create a new collection with whatever name that you give it. So whatever argument you put in, if it can't find one, it'll add that. And then you basically can just use the same. So basically you can use this function to create a collection and to add data to it.
Great.
I don't know if that's what you're asking.
So like on line 20, for example, you could send any like key value pair and it would add it to that.
Yes.
Document.
So if I said, wait.
Yeah, that looks right. Oh, I shouldn't be running out of time. Did you all see that message too? It's like,
Says
Yeah,
you upgraded it.
huh?
Says you upgraded the meeting.
I'm like, it count. I didn't upgrade. That's weird.
Yeah. So
Oh, there we go. Okay. that's
so the
cool.
data, yeah. So the item was just what we gave it. So you can just give it like basically just give it an object, and whatever you put in there is going to be
Awesome. I love it. So brilliant. Thank you. That's very helpful. That's a really helpful thing to include when you're giving a demo to your team of something that you built, is kind of like how they can continue working on it going forward, because y'all will be adding more stuff to this. So
yes.
take note of what Jessica just said.
Yes,
Okay.
and we're here if you have
Yes.
Firestore questions. I mean, I'm no expert yet, but
But you guys are working together so well as a team. So it's very impressive to see. Okay. Other questions about adding to Firestore?
Just the general wizardry of databases, but I think Jessica shared that video for NoSQL and stuff, which is
yeah, I need to rewatch that again.
always kind of a mind pretzel.
Well, you all did an amazing job this week, and I cannot wait to see what you make next week. So with that, we are halfway through the meeting. I'll turn it over to Eddie for a presentation on code reviews.
Yes.
Sure.
Give me 1 second. Share screen. Desktop. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're doing a learning module on code reviews. So a couple of things we're gonna go through is what is a code review, the code review cycle, what makes a code review a great code review, how can I help others review my code, how can I review others' code, and exploring code in GitHub. And just a quick note that I thought about, keep in mind, like every team has their own standard or process for code reviews. So, you know, depending where you're at, could be a little bit different. Some might be like time-based. Some might want kind of like, you know, a more advanced, I guess, descriptive type of structure. Some might want, you know, something lean and quick. And then anything in red is from my experience or my team. So that I work with. So just keep that in mind as well. So what is the code review? It's a conversation about a set of changes, and I'll kind of show you an example about that. But usually, you know, it's you either explaining your code or someone giving you feedback on your code, and then going back and forth, conversating about those changes or anything you did or they want you to do. It's one of the best spaces to share knowledge and learn from others. This one's pretty big. Because I'm always big on, like, you know, if you have something to share that someone else didn't know or something we could improve on, let everybody know. Grab that PR link, throw it on our Slack channel. I think there was one PR in my team where someone kind of took code from somewhere, but they actually grabbed the developer's name and the developer's Twitter handle and like kind of put a doc block on there, and I grabbed that code and I kind of like code review, and I tagged everybody on the team and I posted it up there because I just love the idea of that. It's a collaboration space where you share your work and you also ask questions. It helps you improve as a developer. So as you're reviewing your code or going through that code review, you kind of see where you could improve at or where you could have done better, or even ask questions to see if there was something else you could have done. And it also helps your team. It decentralizes knowledge. So you don't have that knowledge. I don't have that knowledge. Everybody has it there. There's an explanation. If there's a link, you probably post it on there or whatever the case may be. And I'm pretty big on this one as well. It's kind of weird or it's kind of bad, but the saying I like to say at work, if I get hit by a bus coming in the morning to work, like, I don't want to keep this knowledge inside my head. I want everybody else to have it. So it's either in the code or it's in the code review. You share responsibility and you improve on the code base quality. So this is kind of the cycle. You complete your code, you open up the pull request, kind of like you guys did this week. You receive some feedback. Sky gave a lot of great feedback this week. You made your changes, and then it kind of like cycles around again. You get more feedback, you make your changes, and you continue, on that path until you finally get everything approved and then merged in. So what makes a code review a great code review? So don't focus on like the stylistic changes. And this is mine, or enforce like simple standards. And what I consider simple, I couldn't find the right word for this, would be like, a semicolon, a space here or there, like extra tabs and no spaces and uppercases, on numbers and stuff like that. So there's tools out there for that. There's like Prettier, ESLint, there's type checkers. If you're doing backend work, there's tons of stuff for that as well. Now, this is for me and for my team. The more advanced stuff would be like naming conventions. And I think Sky, on one of the PRs, he mentioned like, the way you could have named stuff, the code structure. I'm really big on like code structure. So, I would suggest, like, I've given like code reviews where it's like, hey, try to break up this function into two. This function should be doing one thing, maybe break it up into two separate functions. Models is another example. If you're working with DBs and stuff like that, that would be like another example of like advanced code. So number two, which for me is really number three, because number three plays perfectly into number two, is will you understand the code a month from now? So me going on advanced, like naming conventions, code structures, models, and etc. Are you going to understand that code a month from now? So usually I like asking questions about certain decisions, why they were made, and then the developer will explain it to me. I'll act like I didn't know, or whatever the case was. That way I could kind of like test their knowledge and make sure they're understanding what they did as well. And it helps them understand as well if they missed something, or if they overlooked something. Try to run out the feature locally or in a test environment. And for this one, usually I'm not looking for bugs. I'm just downloading the code, making sure it plays well, making sure it compiles well, making sure the page loads, and then everything else I leave off to QA. Praising is good. I'm always big on that. It's not always about pointing errors or pointing changes. Praising, helps motivate the team. And then as a reviewer, let the other person, know what you learned, and vice versa. So if I didn't know something, I'll let the developer know, like, hey, I didn't know, you could do this. Where did you pick this up? Or can you give me a link to it? And then I'll show you an example of that in a bit. Default to approval. And this is, I had to go back to a couple of the other learning modules to kind of understand this, but it's more of a mindset. So, always look for the best. You're working as a team, so you're not looking to kind of point out everybody's error or try to get them to get denied, or it's not a race to see who's getting the most approvals. So, default to approval. Be kind. Help others understand your changes. Try to answer any questions and take your time. Now, this one, I'm on the line about this one. I'm on the edge about this one because, it also depends on your team as well and how your process is. But usually I try to limit it to 30 minutes. I don't want to spend like an hour or 2 hours trying to review code. Usually, if I'm taking an hour, that's like a sign for me that the task probably could have been broken up into like smaller tasks, or the code could have been, broken up into smaller chunks. But 30 minutes for me, usually it's like that good, like, time. Any questions so far? No?
Question for me. I want to add a quick thing about default to approval. I love that one. But another thing that you can think when you're doing it is like, if you find a little thing in there that you're like, this could be updated, like you could refactor this way, but it's not necessary, like just go ahead and default to approval and approve it, but leave that as a suggestion and let them know that it is a suggestion so that they know they're not blocked on it and they can move forward with the process, but approve it anyway with a suggestion. Or alternatively, if there's something that you're like, no, this definitely has to be changed, make it very clear that you're like, before we merge this, before we approve it, let's change this, and just be very clear about like what needs to happen to move to the next step.
Okay, so these are some examples of, this is from my team, and kind of like what Stacy just said, I don't try to, so I head up the team, so I don't try to enforce anything, and I'm not like, change this because I said you need to change it. Usually I'll ask a question like, what do you think about changing, in this example, changing the subscriptions user to something else? We should probably start thinking about grouping the routes or something like that. So that's one example. And then here's another example, with the code, with the function name. This person just named it Git, and I was like, hey, what do you think about, giving this a more descriptive name? Again, my like thought behind this is like, you're not writing code for yourself, you're writing code for your future self, or your teammate, or the developer that gets hired, 3 to 6 months from now. So he wants to just come in and get to work right away. So stuff like this helps out. Also giving props. In this one, the developer Robert, his function, like he did everything in under 5 lines. He added type checks and he added return types, and I'm like, hey, I love it. I'm digging it. And then this one as well. And he was doing this all throughout the code. And in this message, I'm like, again, nice, like writing clean and maintainable code, in my opinion. So those are a couple of examples of, the type of feedback you can give back. A couple of more examples from this week. You have Kevin and you have Waverly here, again, with the positive and feedback looks great. Nice work with the refactor. Waverly down there as well. Awesome job out in the Firestore and refactoring. You have another one for me. I'm pretty big on like BEM naming conventions for CSS. So this developer, I had to give him his credit because I'm always impressed with his BEM naming conventions. So I wanted him to know that. Up here let me go back. This one with Susan. Now, Susan's a supervisor on a lead developer on my team. And, she's pretty straightforward and blunt about things, but she kind of gives, some feedback here, like, hey, doesn't Beulah Day have a pattern for this? And we use Vue in my team. So Beulah Day is a package for kind of handling forms and the error handling. So she kind of gives feedback to the developer and actually links it to where she could find the docs. And then, the developer is like, hey, and Jen is a junior developer, so she's like, nice, I forgot about that. You know, I was using another developer's example. Maybe we could, you know, add that and change a lot of things. And then we have Sky down here. He gave an awesome comment here, and he was like, I like the work you two did here. Good collaboration. You know, and he gave a couple of feedback, a couple of pointers there, you know, and stuff like that leads to, can you guys see my screen? Hopefully you guys can.
Yep.
The collaboration here and the communication, like one comment led to, you know, you guys going back and forth discussing like naming conventions, and, you know, Sky gave some feedback here. Naming is hard, looking at the use state. And then it was just back and forth, kind of everybody giving feedback to each other. So that was great collaboration there, and great use of code review.
And I'm still, you know, we're all improving at it. There's always iteration that we can do to, and for instance, like I asked for feedback since this is my first time mentoring from the mentors group, and Andrew, you know, replied, oh, you know, you could have given, you suggested a change, but you didn't provide a change. And I was kind of like, okay, well, should I, and so now it was cool for me to get feedback meta that on my feedback. And so next time I'll be like, okay, maybe I'll make a suggestion on what it can be. Yeah.
Is
Nice.
that like, is making a suggestion or like giving sample code, is that like normal, like not normal, but like, is that generally how it's done, or is it more like, oh, refactor it and figure it out?
You know, I think, you know, we're in an interesting environment here because we're supposed to be, you know, mentoring, but not, you know, writing it for you. So that's kind of why I didn't provide an example, as I wanted to, you know, kind of facilitate, oh, well, what would be a better name, instead of just giving you a name and you go copy and paste it in. But at the same time, there was another situation, I know we're not looking at it right now, but where I made a comment, on something to Kevin, and then I saw that there was some change in the code, but it didn't, I apparently was unclear about it. So what I did is, it's just in another comment, you can, there's a fun function in GitHub that's relatively new where you can actually suggest a code change right in your comment. And so I just suggested a code change, and that just, you know, made it easy to, you can click accept this and it creates a commit for it. And I think, you know, you could either do that or you could just, you know, write it in the comment, but it can be helpful to provide a, you know, my text wasn't clear enough to understand like what line I was referring to. So yeah, I think you can go both ways with it. I think it's fully, I mean, nobody's gonna, even if it's not the way that it gets implemented, if you show an example, it just can add clarity. So go for it.
Yeah. All right, and then here we have run the code. So try the feature out locally in a test environment. It gives you confidence. It helps you find things that you wouldn't just from just like skimming the code or just running through it. Don't be tempted to skip it. LGTM, which means looks good to me. PR can include instructions on how to write code depending on the team. So here, this was a backend change, and in order to check this backend change, a migration needed to be run, which means kind of like an update on the database. So he kind of added that there for the reviewer to know, okay, make sure you run this migration before you do anything. If you're not sure, down here on the bottom, I kind of blocked it off a little bit. Ask questions is a great opportunity for learning. And then usually like I said, I'll pull the code. I don't run the test. It's better left off to QA in my opinion. So I just make sure everything kind of plays well and everything looks okay. How can I help others review my code? So add a meaningful PR description. If possible, write meaningful commit messages. I like, a lot of the times what I do, especially with the backend code, is I'll write like little things I did, if I restructure something, if I refactor something, why I removed some code or why I created a new function or whatever the case may be. self-review your code, explain why you did something, ask questions, even if you're the one creating the PR. So it's always good if you're not sure about something, you know, put it in there and you could ask, hey, could I have done this another way? Or could I have used, you know, a library for this or a plugin or whatever the case may be. Helps you make sure you didn't miss anything or leave anything. And this I did a lot of the times, or I still do. Usually when I'm debugging front-end code, I'll leave a little debugger in there and commit the code and then send it up for a PR. And then I'm getting back messages like, hey, you left a couple of debuggers in there. So, you know, going through the code, asking questions, writing messages on why you did something helps you avoid stuff like this. Use screen capture tools, they help a lot. Loom, Sketch, Zappy, take screenshots, and then you can paste them right there in the code. And I think GitHub is now allowing you to actually like, instead of just adding the link to the video, you could actually post the video and it'll play inside the description, if I'm right. And then what you're about to see, I have to warn you, is kind of embarrassing. This is what you don't want to do when you're sending a PR. So these are all by me, which is horrible. Admin updates, doesn't explain anything, doesn't say anything. And all it says is I updated the insurance page to use something for a different dropdown. And I could go with another one, just a bullet point, nothing on there, like the description, the title doesn't even explain anything. And I could go with another one, removed unused page for tracking calls. I don't know why they approved it. I could lie and be like, hey, it was time, I was in a rush, I had meetings to go to. No, I was just being a bad developer. There's even more, bunch of bullet points, but there's no structure to that. And I could probably keep on going for days. So if you guys read the disclaimer, this doesn't represent anything of the Collab Lab standards. Please don't attempt this to replicate this at home or at work. Oh wait, another example. So yeah, don't try this. Now here's some good examples. This was Kevin this week. Luckily, the Collab Lab, we have a really good structure. And I even, Stacy, I even kind of copied your structure from my team, to be honest. But you have the description, you have the related issue, it kind of links there, he linked it there. So you could easily click on it, open up a new page, and you'll see what it's related to. You have the acceptance criteria. I love this, the type of change is quick, easy, you can tell what it is. And then he even added in some images and then testing steps and QA criteria.
10-minute time check, by the way.
Say it again.
10-minute time check. Just checking.
All right, I'm almost done. And then another good example here. Sometimes I do write good PRs. Like I'll explain I remove this logic here and simplified it, and I kind of explained it was unnecessary for whatever reason. We have an example here from Stacy. At one point, she even added a to-do. So she kind of explained, due to last minute circumstances, she had to complete the issue, but she wants to go back and add in Cypress code and test the functionality. So you could get creative with it as well. This is from last year, or not last, well, yeah, last year. Fall's cohort 13. This was a PR, and I love the way this person, they decided to use a UI library to style their application. So she kind of she put the link to it, so she actually linked to it here in the description. Then she came and she explained that she imported it. She imported some Google fonts. She deleted some files, and then she kind of explained everything she did in each file, which is kind of good. I loved it as well, but sometimes it could be, you have to be careful not to be too verbose, because you don't want to have that reviewer reviewing, 4 paragraphs or 5 paragraphs of text on what you did. Kind of like what Sky said earlier, let the code speak for itself. And again, stuff like this, this leads to great collaboration. So you kind of come here, you see the PR, and then you see kind of like Indira, which was one of the mentors. She's kind of, praising this developer for her PR and kind of recommending other stuff. Then comes Shane here, and then he's commenting on what she did, and then Rachel comes back and she's asking another question about the emoji dependencies, if they were going to use them on the app, and then there's back and forth here. So great PRs lead to great collaboration. And then exploring code in GitHub. So GitHub helps you a lot. It gives you the file changes, which you kind of see here in this indicator 1. You can kind of see the code, the lines of code that was changed or removed or added, which you see here is 799 lines updated, hopefully. You can kind of see each commit one by one, and then you can kind of navigate to the next commit there. And most of the tools, GitHub, I was using Bitbucket for a while, and Bitbucket does the same thing. We switched over to GitLab, and GitLab does the same thing. So, they help a lot. Exploring the code in GitHub again, you could mark it as viewed, and you could go back and view it. Again, it gives you the changes that were made, and you could review the changes as well. And then here's some further reading. I like going to Atlassian. They have a lot of good documentation on code reviews and other subjects. You have one here from SmartBear, Asana, DigitalOcean, and then Google. And you guys could, take a look at those links, on your own time, further reading if you guys want to do it, share it with other people. And then I want to hear your thoughts. What's been your past experience with code reviews? How did you feel this week? And how has it felt over the last week and in previous experience to have your code reviewed?
I'll just share. I mean, I haven't really had my code reviewed like at all. That was one of a concern I had, or maybe a complaint I had like with the program that I went through, is that we didn't really have any like formal way that people were really looking at our code or giving us much feedback on our code. So it was really helpful. Sky's comments were really, really helpful, and just kind of helping me see like sorts of things that I should be on the lookout for. And this was also really helpful to hear, what to prioritize as far as, people have, maybe like styling differences, ways that they maybe structure their code that might be a little bit different, but just knowing kind of what to pay attention to, and what sorts of, I don't know, feedback is helpful. So this was really great. Thank you for sharing and putting this together.
No problem.
Other thoughts on how code review went this week, or what you did or didn't like about it, or just general thoughts? Anyone? It's okay if you don't. No pressure.
I liked it quite a bit, actually. It's definitely a little bit nervous. And then even with pushes, you see them in the Slack with that automation. So that's kind of like probably good for slowing down a bit and like thinking about things more methodically and being really descriptive about it. But it's nice to get feedback and go through a couple iterations of that process for like getting the best result. And also just thinking about little things that improve as a developer, like setting that default to false. Like that application would probably run fine, but you know, months from now, if it was like something in production and we hadn't set that, and then somehow a user stumbles into a weird case where that's the issue and we didn't clear that up, you know, in the beginning, then have to go back and find that teeny little thing of like setting that default. So it's cool to like at each step go through it for the best product, I think.
Totally. I love it. I love that like idea too of like self-review before you even send it off to somebody, go into the files, change and say like, did this because of this, did that because of that. It's like, it just helps people really like get their bearings around it.
Mm-hmm.
Wavy, do you have any thoughts you wanted to share? Again, it's okay to go.
Kind of just, I guess, building off of what Jess and Kevin said, I personally was really nervous about code reviews before. Like, oh, did I write make sense? Does it make sense? Best practices in general. But I think what I'm really excited about is as we continue building out this project together, getting used to having our stuff reviewed, and not even just for myself, but even I think it was really important to bring up thinking about who you'll be or the developer you see 3 to 6 months later down the road. Because I know I've even looked at some of my own projects and I've been like, wait a second, how did I do this? And I think keeping that in mind is really important. So thank you so much for this. I'm excited to do more code reviews with everyone. And yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So for me, like, it was really hard, like as an early career engineer, to come in and do code reviews on way more senior engineers than me. Cause I look at their code and be like, I have no idea what this code does at all. Like, looks good to me, which is not the way to go about it. And so I learned pretty quickly that it is perfectly okay for your code review to just be asking questions. Like, can you tell me more about why you did this here? Or can you tell me more about what this does? Can you tell me more about this? What does this do? Because it not only helps them solidify their understanding by explaining it to you, but it helps you understand so that going forward, when you see code like that again, you'll know what it does. And you can offer feedback that you learned from whoever you were reviewing before. So questions are totally fine. If you're not quite sure what to do or what to comment on, try finding a question. Any other thoughts before we move on to issues? And if you have other thoughts, of course, you can always share them in Slack and we will always answer them.
I was going to ask quickly, and you kind of touched on it, about sticking very like as tightly to the AC as possible. One thing Waverly and I were discovering or wondering was that like, you know, there's sort of like a 5 hour minimum suggestion per developer. And I think we tackled our issue in about an hour. And I know that's probably some first week stuff, but just, we were like, well, we could do this or this kind of, because we're already here and paired, but wondering what like the protocol is for that and delivering on an issue or over delivering and maybe getting
what I would probably recommend. Yeah, I think going forward, things will end up taking a lot more time. But if you do find that you have extra time, what I would recommend is trying to either go to the very next issue on the project board and see if you can start organizing an idea around how you would approach that to hand it off to whatever teammate takes it next. Or in the very end, you can look at like the last issues. We'll be talking about styling the app. And that whole process involves like coming up with like a style guide and like coming up with ideas and really collaborating on what it could look like. So you could always get started on that because it's not like a lot of coding in the beginning. It's more just like planning. So it's like you won't be like stepping on your own toes. You'll just be getting ahead. So, but I think the next few weeks, hopefully you'll be a little more preoccupied. But great work. Yes, I love it. Okay. If you have other questions, share them in the cohort channel if you have questions or comments or thoughts about code review specifically, because everybody's going through the same learning module this week. So it'll be helpful for everybody to see. But these are the issues we are doing this week. And we looked at the project board earlier, but it's 3 and 4. So number 3 is, as a user, I want to set up a new shopping list so I can start tracking purchased items. And what that means is a shopping list consists of a set of items associated with a user's token. Creating a new list consists of the following sequence. 1, generate a new unique token. 2, save that token into local storage. And 3, show the user that list's view. So there's a script in your project already called tokens.js. You don't need to worry about what that script does. You just need to know that whenever you run it, it returns you a token. That's the token you'll take and save into local storage. So the acceptance criteria for users who don't already have a token. So you'll check and see, is there a token in local storage? Yes or no. If they don't have one, you'll see a button or a link on the home screen that allows them to click it to create a new one. Clicking that button will generate a new token using that script and will save it to local storage. Once the token has been created and saved, the user is redirected to the list view. And for users who do have a token in local storage already, you're somebody who's coming back to the app and local storage already sees you have a token, you'll be taken directly to the list view. So again, this already exists. If you look at this wireframe, I left a comment here, just the create new list button. It'll just be like this. You don't have to style it or anything. Just click the button and it creates a token and saves it to local storage. I don't know how you guys organized your work last week, but this is a great place to talk about like your process here, notes on your progress, etc., because it's tied then directly to the issue that you're working on. So in the future, if you go back to do the same kind of work in another app or on another team, you can be like, oh, right, I left myself really clear instructions on where I'd been, what had worked and what didn't, to kind of help guide the future you. Okay, so that's number 3 is creating new lists. Number 4, as a user, I want to add a new item to my shopping list so I can start recording purchases, which half of this is already done, so you're in luck. The new item consists of the following data points. And again, we kind of talked quickly about how to add things to the database using the new function in place. So hopefully that'll give you some clues here, but you need the name of the item, how soon you're likely to buy it again, soon, kind of soon or not soon, and the last purchased date. So the last date that it was purchased, if it had been purchased. The acceptance criteria are a user is presented with a form that allows them to enter the name of the item and select how soon they anticipate needing it again. Soon, kind of soon or not soon. When the user submits the form, the item is saved into the database and associated with that token. Now, since the other pair is simultaneously working on generating that token, you won't have it over in this issue. So I would suggest just using some dummy data to, just put it up in the database so that you have something to work with, but don't try and generate a new token in this issue. Just use a static one. Along with the item name, an integer corresponding to the estimated number of days will need to be saved. So 7 for soon, 14 kind of soon, 30 for not soon. The last purchase date should be set to null initially because you've never purchased it before. Item names should be displayed as a simple unordered list on the list view after they're added. And the shopping list consists of the data points that we mentioned before. Why is this on here twice? I can't explain that, but I think that this is just extra, right? That looks the exact same. I'm going to delete that. Anyway, does anybody have any questions about this one? This one seems a little complex, but I think like once you start digging in, you'll be able to kind of wrap your head around it a little bit better. If you look at the wireframe that again I commented on, here's just an example of how you will use or have the radio buttons. And there are some accessibility notes here too that you'll want to check out to make sure that you're making your form accessible to all your users. So, any questions on those?
I just have a quick question about like the app in general, because we did meet and we were just wanting to kind of clarify. So there's no user authentication for this app?
Nope. The only auth that will take place is just having a token. Like a user has to have a token to get into a list. So later on, you'll get into like token sharing, like, so I could send Sky a token and we could collaborate on a list together. That's like as deep as the auth goes. But if you ever wanted to implement auth into this app, it is your app to do that too. And I would suggest, like I mentioned before, creating a GitHub issue and then tackling it whenever you have time and want to work that into it. And Firebase actually has some auth that you can play with too, so that you're just using more Firebase here.
And then, okay, cool. And then, so basically the way it'll work is is there a log out type
there
feature or?
That is a good question. So I don't think that there is a way right now that you can, I think you can join a different list maybe. So this is where you would put the token to join an existing list. I'm not sure if once you're on the list, if it's something like leave list or.
Okay. But
you
so a person is not going to have a list of lists. Like they're going to be
one
they
list.
open the app, they'll have one list. Okay.
Exactly. In fact, that could be a good thing to create a GitHub like feature request issue for, is like ability to leave a list, because I don't think that we do that here. I think you would just have to manually remove the token from local storage.
Right.
I could be wrong. It's been a long time.
Okay. Yeah, we just wanted to clarify how it's all going to work.
I love that. Those questions are great. Okay. So does anybody have any preference on which issues you would like to take? If not, I will just randomly assign them. Thoughts. Any first takers? If you want it, just grab it. Nobody's feelings are going to be hurt, I promise.
I'd kind of be down to do the token setup.
Awesome. Okay, so that would be new list. Number 3, Jessica and Wavy. So assign to Jessica and Wavy. And number 4, then we'll go to Kevin and Maisha. Wait, there we go. Did it go? I clicked it. Okay, cool. All right, those are all assigned. Don't forget, if you're working on the add item 1, so Kevin and Maisha, don't try and generate a token, just create one and store it up in Firebase so that you can make sure everything works. And then in the end of the week, we'll probably have to do a little bit of full group collaboration to make sure we're taking that new token and replacing the dummy token that we had in place.
I was looking at the token file and it looks like it's just a random word. So it doesn't even have to be too tricky. It's not like a big hash or anything.
It's like, it puts together some really weird combinations though that are a bit.
Oh, okay. It adds them together.
They're kind of funny. Not intentionally so, but it's just, they're wacky. Anyway, anybody have questions? If not, I'm sure you will, but if you have them, you can just drop them in Slack. Good. All right. Well, with that, I will say farewell and we will see you in Slack. Don't forget, if you have questions, be noisy because we're totally all in this together. Good. All right.
Quick question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Sky.
I noticed, did we have 2 people that did office hours this week?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I think we did. Anyhow, I'm going to be doing office hours this week, and I'm curious if a certain time worked better, if you had 2 different office hours you attended, if one, or should I just throw up a survey?
I would just say maybe like we'll probably get started earlier in the week, so maybe Wednesday on would be beneficial, since to make sure that we've already looked at it. But yeah.
Cool. Maybe we'll do it's all just to throw a small survey with like 3 or 4 options in the channel, and y'all can respond to it.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Amazing.
Sounds great.
Well, we'll
kick ass this week.
Great work. Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.